Hello, Americans. The best way to get the backs of leaders, of your presidents slash chief, in that country's A through Z is not by leaving out the voices who are not allowed to be heard. And whether you are the president or you are some kid in some suburb or some city, and know how the suburbs were designed per science, per honest science, were designed for the torture and extortion and fact cheating nature slavery of America's founders, particularly the ones behind James Madison and his plan that went and got George Washington to agree to be a part of that plan and to use that plan, which is a plan to force the other 13, was to force the other colonies to come to be, where and how everyone's locations, areas, and states as colonies before they were states. Everyone's a state of things per the dictionary definition of state. They were captive states. They were tortured, simultaneously extorted, and enslaved to be part of value nature systems, economics treatments. Enslaved. Value nature systems. We're going to use the word value nature because nature shows us to refer to it this way. English was revealed more probably and demonstrated more probably than what is convicted. That is only remembered or heard regarding summary convictions, regarding what history teaches. You guys leave out the breaching method at locations, areas, and states A through Z, at countries A through Z, at groupings of countries A through Z. So, in other words, A through Z, you left out. So all these things are positive, but there's a difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positive and positive. And there's a difference between what is true and what is especially true. And there's a difference between, people want to have debates about motivation. At countries A through Z, at campuses A through Z, you guys left out how there are criminally foreign influenced database relationships, and or you guys are recorded blaming on other things, others, or selves, the causes of that. The reason why wars contain such evil is because you guys left out. In other words, look at the nature of debate. You bring up one person in a whole country's like Hitler. In other words, this is why you have names uses where it's relative, where there are means hyper evidentially recorded to demonstrate clearer than day. Every single person is being attached to, it has been attached to fake ties, fake natures of ties to other people. And all exceptions in exception nature after that, with that, is they're using it to hide what, for example, where and how oaths. If anyone was really honestly, they would have came to these. They would have, when it was prevented, the quality of fact cheating nature necessary for people with their clear voices to defend themselves. Note and rights we have that are too numerous to list for the Constitution regarding how to read it. We have people using the knowledge of good and evil, for example, to use a phrase from the Bible, from the Old Testament. The Old Testament dictates how to defend the Old Testament at the beginning of it. People don't even know that. The Quran has a part that dictates how to defend the Quran. People don't even know that. Because the people who defend the Quran in the Old Testament and the people who counter them and the exceptions gleaned through other natures of collusion slash S, with all that was entertained that can't be entertained and afforded to be, let alone to protract. Convictions proper by the Constitution unabridged. And I mean convictions per so things can be, with your mind, not convictions in cases, but the same thing. And, in other words, but not the same thing because the identity of the definition of each word is greater than and more finite than its parts grouped individually. Its definition, because identity science and why and how we question things. For example, to understand what happened with the best things in the news or the worst things in the news, you have to look at American history, look at history. And we know right where they were sustained. Negative value nature progressions acts in nature is only allowed to be. Rolls with that. Simultaneously, there were criminal insidiousness natures of positives that were in collusion to keep from discernment the identity of the breaching method as a scientific value, but also as that which nature itself is showing us to name a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, and to offer this as means to present to the countries, for example, especially the ones with no means to combat. I mean, not because they would need combat. In other words, Russia and America had nuclear weapons and means to transverse to Earth. China too. And we had yin yang and alpha and omega. And more probably, demonstrably, for example, yin yang and alpha and omega were revealed to be taught together and to teach algebraic consciousness / consciousness algebraic, which is simultaneously the consciousness algebraic / algebraic consciousness, because the identity of hypersimultaneous is not only greater than and more finite than in active relativity to all parts of space / existence, but it is also with the rest of its complete identity, which cannot and will not juxtapose with this part of space / existence that is temporary / lasting, where and how more and more of its identity of value progression as a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible is making more of its identity of volume as ourself / S, as Earth / humanity / the other species. Each species is an individual species body of individual bodies, with all grouped difference singular / differences generated from that one identity of hyper simultaneous hyper relativity to the extent we could discern. Even if something is made up, it is inseparable 1 / 3 / 5 ways from all parts of that thing individually. The finite parts, the grouped parts, the active relativity of the group parts, the simultaneous. What makes a great painting, what makes a great art is it works together. But in other words, how to get the presidents, that's why how to get the presidents back. Right now, Donald Trump is giving a speech, a presidential candidate, but also a president / chief. And for example, President Biden and President Chief Biden and President/Chief Trump and President, etc. before that, and to come, God willing. Know how nature shows us the seasons to come before they get here. See, we will know how nature shows us. It is how and why we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. It is how and why there are exceptions where we have the same color eyes, with the exceptions part too. See, it already answered all kinds of natures of questions. And there are proofs that the ancients, in the first part of the semi-ancients, they couldn't fathom that humanity could forget how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts of nature. That everyone would even fathom or be capable of making everyone not realize or be able to discern how to reveal means out of nowhere. Evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere. But by the science of its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that, 3 ways equally increasing as value. With any subject, we could I don't want to say grapple with, but you know that too. But not that alone. Any subject we could diffuse to, from, with, as, and for. Where diffusion, I'm using the definition of diffusion, where there is an identity, there's the identity of the way things are, what things are. In other words, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that causes things sometimes to be diffused through a cell membrane, like through a membrane, and go on to the other side, like maybe a color would inside water on one side of the membrane will go through the membrane. More like that nature of diffusion, but also the opposite. Because we're not just being shown opposites and middle. We're being shown its identity relationship to itself, and the value of that. And we are also being shown how its identity is manifest 3 ways. Grouped, identity of relationship to itself, distinctly from how it is manifest from our perspective, 5 ways, simultaneously, distinctly, grouped. For example, the 5 identities of time. The ancients more probably and demonstrably appreciated as the 5 parts of the identity of forever's identity of its body, and to the extent we could discern. Like, for example, the tip of the hair on your head, your complete identity won't fit into it, but it can't help anymore. But already is all, in other words, it's like that. Like your hair is a semi-nature relationship to your complete identity. And or to the complete identity of the species individual body, of individual bodies. So we have experts on logic and reason. And we have experts on law and experts on the sciences that were shown simultaneously. It is only concentrated where there is psychiatry and psychology, and there are databases tied to them, where they've been attaching people to fake conversations, fake ties, fake natures of ties, fake presence next to doctors, little kids, and adults. And then they use crime methods like pretending, oh, well, you only have to have a quick time of seeing them, and that's a diagnosis. They don't even have to see them. They have rules with still forcing child abusers, with people with child abuses locations, rules with that too in the past, because there are juxtaposed distinct natures of organized crimes. which is one of the things that black pupils' rights of eyes, and other having been assigned northern colonies and southern colonies, and then America's founders were born. And everyone was roles with that, and or they were sensed. Everyone was roles with the counters to it exactly syntactically, and collusion is the way the breaching method needed, otherwise they were sensed. Not just the way it's known, crazy, crazy laws against every single person, every difference, to keep everyone would tell on each other. If they, in other words, I learned at Central Connecticut State University, if people were found out to have been speaking about building infrastructure outside of meetings that were monitored by international companies, they would kill that person and everyone tied to them. And I'll see those are people that are already fact, tribute, nature, enslaved. This came from semi-ancient times, that referred to now as ancient times. So where we have things like peace needed, science would have shown us there's a distinction between peace and hyper peace, because there's a difference between criminal insidiousness natures of peace and peace and hyper peace, which is also positive unto itself, but also because every identity has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. And the identity of relativity to everyone is of the scientific value alone of the breaching method. One of the things that black peoples and whites of eyes with other assigned for its meaning is about is a human fact, human nature breaching method. If we examine how and why that was left out, even though that's true always, not denying slaves exceptions, not denying someone else using those truths for lies or anything like that. It's about a human fact, human nature breaching method. It's about a human volume science /S. Tactical ulterior from this one individuals of the individual species body and group difference /S. Because it's not our difference, not our species that invented all the other species with the same volume science, individual group difference, and simultaneously, distinctly, but also non-distinctly, two eyes of birds, even of, like bugs, quality, aspect, nature, consciousness. There's a system that we have been tactical ulterior from. And that system is hyper native pure. And that system shows us means, even if we are not Native American, not just because it's president /chief, but that's also a cipher to be deciphered. We're supposed to appreciate that breaching method that had been sustained upon Native Americans A through Z before our founders were born. And if they didn't hurt each other as roles with it, they were sensed and hurt, and worse. That had been sustained since semi-ancient times, already perfected method against the people who were involved with it. Because this method makes names hurt names, and or help names help at names, right where and how where no one's checking, but it's aware of it. It know where and how it can be discerned. The roles behind the breaching method, which uses lie progressions from every location /S, right back to and as all locations, but with further hyper additional apparent motivations, nature influences as criminal insidiousness nature. I am not a lawyer. We have the hyper evidential means to discern how lawyers, all sides of criminal and civil cases, news, the interbranch, the prisons tied to them, the corrections offices tied to them, state judicial branch offices next to them, names next to them, the campuses they went, where they live. Everyone gets locked into lie progressions, repeating fake things. Where how this breaching method employed all natures of integrity, all natures of positive syntactical, all natures of descriptions of names, as natures, as systems of description, tactically ulterior from how nature employed A through Z to be the voicing slash voicings of its a special difference too with Earth, or we lose it. Per science, Leith of Hadith is more probably having been understood by the ancients and discerned by the ancients as the effect of force space nature transfer, not extinction or the negative value nature progression, like a desert would be formed. Like say this could be true, this theory of mine, that they made the people fight with each other, leaving out their own name that started it. And this is still manifest. They do this on a mass scale. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, news names, interbranch names, intelligence names, their state offices, next to names next to their offices. They are kept with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the differences between strangers, people they know, their neighbors, their families. They self-value that as used by the breaching method to screen itself, involved with motivations and names at locations, areas, and states, A through Z. It is manifest where there are subjects treatments. So there are five distinctly hyper invisible but still discernible distinct parts, not just of time. There are other means to show that this is why and how. In other words, one of the things it is an identity of forever nature. And an identity as relativity, as why we have questions. But again, as a system with them, and as a nature with them, and as answers with them while not, by any way. But we have been that system used for other systems. So where and how it needs us to use short words and their protraction. Both their protraction and the short words are prevented. Honest reception. On a mass scale, at countries A through Z, at locations, areas, states A through Z. The spying never stopped. The needs and means to hide roles with the databases before computers, identities of relativity to ourselves, also with the singular identity of the breaching method that knew that nature's identity too would keep demonstrating itself. All identities of logic expertise used to blame other things, others, ourselves. Industries raised reliant upon that, increasingly need to be a theater by the value of economic wealth. Wow, there are real means, there are real needs to compete economically because countries individually grouped and together. Self-value, blaming and having blamed other things, others, ourselves, even for things our founders commonly communicated rather than said, left us means to demonstrate they communicated for us to blame things on a breaching method, not on other things, others, ourselves, or themselves. But that quality of fact should be nature's being and has been forbid. So that makes evil upon any individual voice. If you are a leader, no matter how powerful you could get, you could only be above locations, areas, and states. Criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence. And even when trying to be a patriot or other countries' equivalents. We are in a semi trap. Forgiveness is something that we're supposed to, is not to give up. Forgiveness is to not leave out the breaching method when with blame, like blaming white. You leave out in other words, the argument there too contains, well, the answers would have been solved because everyone communicated other for what our founders communicated to communicate for themselves about that. I'm not a doctor. Ron Adams is trying to frame me with police. Ron Adams says, and courts that have been planting evidences. I caught them with child abusers. And he's switching names, roles with the intelligence community. One of the people involved shot a pellet gun at me the day before Trump was shot at. Ron Adams, you said you had a wedding with Judge Napolitano. Please contact him because his Facebook is involved with people with foreign and domestic police forms, families, cyber police, different natures of police forms, who also have roles with the principal child defender's Facebook page of his campus with some KKK black themed, Confederate flag themed names, also involved with names with court switching and forging names. Because before the World Trade Center attack, not in legal context, a stranger came to me. Court confessed, demonstrated, confirmed things about uses of the locations. I didn't tell them the rest of it, but have been by other people in the past about, like Eric Burgess. He's involved with the New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts. Also, I found out former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their lawyer were planting evidences with the family members of courts and foreign and domestic, a whole bunch of criminal enterprises, people, leaders of the kids, including a principal child abuser, are more involved with that intercity, with foreign and domestic military, and a park near a house where Eric Burgess lived at the time, and near a religious spot near there. There are people that have been. These are people that have been with Wethersfield Police switching and forging names, also as with the same house/S involved with other police departments and family police chiefs retired, involved further with medical and defenders of kids, offenders of kids, including with foreign and domestic ones on and off the campuses, further with the principal child abuser. I never met her. There's a whole bunch of people that work with they were neighbors of them to Laura Saunders, Dr. Laura Saunders, people associated with the Institute of Living, involved also with the Leahy family. That I was around, they took a picture of me, tried to pretend I had a fake conversation, but I never had a conversation with them in my life. They did that with judges and prosecutors speaking fake things in records through time, with a whole bunch of people tied to them who planted evidences on my street from other areas through time. These are people involved with the World Trade Center attack and home break-ins because they have roles using investigators, criminally foreign influence, all the aspects, all kinds of nature, all the things they have to stay looking unmarked police forms. They have acting professors and people associated with names along Church Street in Old Wethersfield, like Hanson, Heather Hanson, has a Bruce Hanson. I never had a conversation with him, his wife. I'm involved with people like John DeMorrow and multiple people with the name Joe DeMorrow. And with the houses near me, involved with home break-ins increasingly, confessions, uses of it tied to it. And the houses on Trinity, a whole bunch of people at Trinity College have roles with untimely death and planting evidence, federal evidences, crimes, fake letters, fake emails, changed emails, fake motives for it, as the ones who planted evidence on my street in Wethersfield, as people involved who did that at other places I lived. There are leasing agents next to it was Brittany Farms. They're changing the names of the streets. See, foreign and domestic, including a Kuwaiti general involved with the various campuses, deans, and principals and their kids' uses by the same names involved with the home break-ins and the witness protection program and their rules with mayors and people tied to mayors and overt criminal enterprises at the same time. And news attached me to fake conversations with them, WFSB. And see, they manipulate the policies of companies. Twitter, and now X, I still can't get a response. Twitter has more involved with the upskirt pictures principle. I caught him doing worse things than upskirt rules. Their rules would tactically juxtapose distinct natures of organized crime between the campuses and use/s of it. People all along Route 3 through time who use my name involved with the we're widening forensics increasingly with the state police, Rocky Hill police families, retired and standing, a whole bunch of different countries, and as people involved with Saudi Arabia that they forced the roles of predicate acts before the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. One's named Demaro Scalora and Cololo said the one's named Demaro and Cololo said they had cousin Scalora as a shared cousin. And they, in other words, they're increasingly putting fake things in databases and roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases in the interbranch switching names and sequences at the same time. And these are interstates. Has something to do with the roles of predicate acts with facts and methods recorded on off the state judicial branch offices with the names next to it. At the same time as collusions with Wethersfield police, switching names, forging names, wire crime acts and methods. Two, where they fake the audio video transcripts. And they're switching names, putting fake ties and fake natures of ties between people. Intercities, time, too. And so, in other words, it's important. And Rod Adams, you said if I pointed to your liar to you, we're the worst liar with kids involved. So it has something to do with their roles also with Pakistani families, where some of the members work with the cyber police. How stupid the cyber police with their thought, where they're jumping in. See how they forced the principal child defender and Twitter before the sale to X. They put upskirt picture and they brought the name Ian in. His neighbors are increasingly involved with, like, there's a Mr. Hagenbar increasingly told lies about me and planted people with planting evidences with judges and prosecutors and their family members with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, identity theft, fraud, slaying, a whole bunch of people tied to with Jonathan Mayano involved with sequence shifts with them. They post-dated legal papers inside the World Trade Center. Inside the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center in the World Trade Center attack, and before it, to make it look like things that had been timely handed into the Ninth Circuit Court. They posted him from inside the court to appear late to the panel of judges in the ninth in the World Trade Center attack. So it has something to do. In other words, a Dean Judd from Central Connecticut State University and his kid is also one of the ones involved with the Harper courts and the FBI and foreign and domestic military that forced Saudis to collusions with them. Also, whiting forensics. People associated with Gail King and her family members are also with WFSB wire crime acts and methods and hiding their roles also with child abusers, including at the people at the location supposed to counter that. Same people that are running the prisons and learning how to run them through Central Connecticut State University have roles: criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, rock, and remote uses of that and their life progressions from the collusions as predicate acts between campuses. Central Connecticut State University has military also increasingly since I was a kid involved with planting evidences on all sides of my house, like people with the name Burstein. And these are also medical offenders and people, the only ones that are there for it, etc. This is a breaching method also because these are names next to Harper Hospital with overt criminal enterprises who are also increasingly involved with untimely deaths that have similarities between them where they had effective confessions to make and uses of those locations, and the ones tied to the home break-ins and wire crimes of the Wethersfield police with that. They didn't follow protocol, and they God knows what they put in the record when I recorded them. You know, when Tony DeMoro called them on the phone from my house when I caught them doing a break-in scam. And I don't know that girl's name. That wasn't no. I met a girl through him, and FBI directors and stuff like that, courts. They've been telling lies to everyone around me. They've been attaching me to fake. They use rights to lie where they don't. With a whole bunch of people with Wethersfield police involved with East Hartford locations and names, like Scalora and DeMar, who have rules with a Judge Smith too. I had to write a complaint about him. There's a Judge Killian who spoke fake things in records, who has more Facebook rules with child digital sex offenders, and female judges are also involved. They have drugs and medicines crimes with their family members, all kinds of sick locations and roles with names at the elderly homes, in the veteran homes and spots next to it, which is also next to the state corrections offices, one of the elderly homes, involved with the people involved with the untimely deaths, planting evidences at Trinity College and CCSU, on and off the campuses with the names next to it. They're implying that's intelligence. And why they make me keep talking about this stuff. You follow men to the law with care. You know, but they can't do that because it shows that they've been roles with predicate acts with facts. That's how that breaching method uses them remotely. The difference of it too. The overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, the counters to the borders, and the overt criminal enterprises have collusions because they're all in the narratives together through time. Increasingly, people next to the three spots at the end of the Burn Turnpike have rules planting evidences on my street, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and on the campuses behind my back. You guys should fear God to hide and plot. Get me off the fake conversation with WFSB too, and make sure I have a response for the principal child offenders confessions, because there are more. So Secret Service, FBI, CIA. The only reason I know how to pronounce the name Kelly Kaczmarek, she's brought involved with this KKK theme, Confederate flag theme, uses of corners, and planting evidences in my classes. And people involved with state police and whiting forensics, increasingly planting evidences on Morgan Circle, with names on Morgan Circle. Get the heck on paper real fast. Now, let's get on paper real fast.